She met him when life was simple. No luxury, no connections, no guarantees. Just two people trying to survive in a world that demanded more than they had. They lived in a small apartment where the walls were thin and the future felt uncertain. Some nights they laughed over cheap meals. Other nights, they lay awake, worrying about bills they couldn't yet pay. She believed in him deeply. When he doubted himself, she reminded him who he was becoming. When doors closed, she told him another would open. She worked extra hours so he could chase opportunities. She stayed quiet about her own dreams so his could breathe. Then slowly, things began to change. He started coming home later, dressing better, talking less. Success was finally noticing him, and with it came new friends, new rooms, new standards. She noticed the way people looked at her now, the pauses in conversations, the polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. At gatherings, she felt invisible beside him, not because she was silent, but because no one listened. One evening, surrounded by people who measured worth in appearance and income, he said it, not loudly, not angrily, just enough for her to hear. He told her she no longer fit into the life he was building, that he needed someone who looked the part, someone who wouldn't hold him back. The words didn't cut at first. They sank in slowly, like cold water. She waited for someone to defend her, a friend, a relative. No one did. That night at home, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply told her he wanted a divorce, not because she had done something wrong, but because she no longer added value to his image. She packed her things quietly, folded memories into boxes, left behind a life she helped build. As she closed the door, she didn't cry, because sometimes the deepest heartbreak isn't loud. It's the moment you realize love was conditional all along. She arrived in the new city with 2 suitcases and a past she refused to explain. No one there knew her name. No one cared who she used to be married to. And for the first time in a long while, that anonymity felt like freedom. She found a small room in a quiet neighborhood. The walls were plain. The nights were long. Every morning she woke before the sun, one job in the early hours, another in the evening. She learned how to survive on little, how to stretch meals, how to smile even when exhaustion sat heavy on her shoulders. Sometimes on her way home, she passed storefronts glowing with luxury she could not afford. She never slowed her steps. She never looked bitter. Online, her past followed her quietly. Photos of her ex-husband appeared. Tailored suits, expensive dinners, a new wife whose life looked effortless. She scrolled past without comment. No anger, no explanation. At night, when the city went quiet, the questions came. Was she ever enough? Did love ever matter? She answered them the only way she knew how, by getting up the next day and continuing. Then one evening, the sky broke open. Rain fell hard and unforgiving, drenching the streets and emptying them of warmth. As she hurried toward shelter, she noticed a man ahead of her stumble. He was well-dressed, out of place in the storm. At first, she hesitated. People in cities learn to keep moving, but something in his struggle made her stop. He collapsed near the curb, gasping, disoriented. Cars passed, footsteps rushed by. No one stopped. She knelt beside him, shielding him from the rain with her coat. She helped him sit up, spoke calmly, steadily, as if she had all the time in the world. She guided him into a nearby cafe just before it closed, bought him water with money she couldn't spare, waited until his hands stopped shaking. When he thanked her, she shook her head. She didn't ask his name. She didn't ask for help. She simply stood, offered a quiet smile, and said she hoped he would be all right. Then she stepped back into the rain, unaware that she had just crossed paths with a life that would soon change her own forever. He watched her walk away through the rain, not curious about where she lived, not interested in her name. What stayed with him was her composure, the way she helped without hesitation, without expectation. Days passed, then weeks, but he couldn't forget her. He had met many people in his life, powerful people, ambitious people, people who smiled only when something was to be gained. She was different. Their next meeting was no accident. This time the rain was gone. The city was calm. He approached her casually as if they were strangers meeting for the first time. She recognized him instantly but said nothing about that night. They spoke about work, about life, about how the world measures success. She didn't complain. She didn't speak of struggle. When he asked what she wanted from life, she paused, not long enough to sound uncertain, long enough to sound honest. She said she wanted opportunity, not rescue, a chance to build something with her own hands. The answer surprised him. Most people asked for shortcuts. She asked for space. They met again and again. He listened more than he spoke. He learned she was intelligent, disciplined, and quietly ambitious. That she carried disappointment without letting it define her. Once he offered to help her financially. She refused gently. She said she was not broken, just rebuilding. From that moment, he decided to help her in a way she would never feel indebted. Without revealing who he was, he removed barriers. An application that had been ignored was suddenly approved. A door that had stayed closed opened without explanation. She questioned her luck, but never relied on it. She worked harder. Each small win restored something inside her. Confidence, belief, direction. She never knew someone was watching, studying not her success, but her response to it. And in her quiet rise, the man who had everything began to realize that the rarest form of wealth he had encountered was character. The invitation arrived on a quiet afternoon, heavy paper, gold lettering, an address that made her hesitate. It was for an exclusive event, the kind she had never imagined herself attending. She read it twice, then set it down, unsure if it belonged to her at all. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. Then she decided to go. She chose a simple outfit, nothing flashy, nothing borrowed. When she entered the venue, the room was filled with confident voices and polished appearances, people who looked comfortable in power. She moved carefully, aware of old memories stirring. Then she saw him. Her ex-husband stood across the room, surrounded by laughter, wearing the confidence she once helped him build. He noticed her too. His expression shifted. Surprise first, then amusement. He leaned towards someone beside him, whispering, smiling. She felt the familiar weight of judgment return, but this time, it didn't crush her. The lights dimmed. The host stepped forward and spoke about vision, leadership, and impact. Then he announced a special recognition. A man walked onto the stage. Her breath caught. It was him, the stranger from the storm. Only now, he was introduced by a name that carried power across industries. A man whose influence filled the room without effort. The audience listened as he spoke. He told a story about a night when wealth meant nothing. About collapsing in the rain while the world passed by. About a woman who stopped. He described her calm, her kindness, her refusal to take advantage of his vulnerability. Then he looked directly at her and said she had reminded him of something he had almost forgotten, that dignity cannot be bought. The room erupted in applause. Her ex-husband stood frozen. The woman he once dismissed as a liability was now the reason the most powerful man in the room stood humbled. After the applause faded, the room felt different. The conversations that resumed were softer, more careful. People who had ignored her minutes earlier now looked for her eyes. She acknowledged them politely, but she did not change. She never looked toward her ex-husband again. Not out of pride, not out of anger. He no longer held space in her future. Later that evening, the man approached her quietly. There were no cameras, no audience. He thanked her again, not as a billionaire, but as a human being. He told her he had watched her growth, not the results, the discipline behind them. He offered her a partnership, not charity, not control, a shared vision. She listened carefully, then she accepted, on one condition, that her independence would remain intact. He agreed without hesitation. In that moment, she understood something she had never been taught, that being chosen is not the same as being valued, and that rejection, when rooted in shallow standards, is not a verdict. It is a release. She left the event alone, not because she lacked company, but because she finally walked with certainty. Some people lose greatness because they only recognize worth after it has risen beyond their reach. And some lives change, not through revenge, but through quiet, undeniable growth. Thanks for watching. Please, it will be a great thing to subscribe to our channel.